Hi, this is Kelly Delatorre reporting for ICOSA from the Global New Energy Summit in Colorado Springs. With us today is Denis Hayes, President and CEO of Bullet Foundation and the Executive Director, the first Executive Director of Earth Day. Welcome to the show, Denis.
It's good to be here, Kelly.
Denis, in your keynote address was amazing, and the things that you talked about and the changes that we need to make to our energy landscape, I think everybody in the room agreed with. The thing that, from my perspective, is how do you make those regulatory changes to support the changes that we need in cutting our energy use and implementing new technologies? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Certainly there's going to be a regulatory role, and certainly we are in an anti-regulatory atmosphere nationally right now. So I think most of this stuff is going to be happening at the state level and the local level. And there seems to be a higher degree of comfort with going with renewable portfolio standards to insist that a certain amount of electricity come from renewable sources, even standards that have carve-outs for particular technologies to get them started. And if you're going to be trying to have buildings get far more efficient, that's going to be dominated by energy codes that are always state and local. And in fact, most state codes now sort of give you a basement that you can't fall underneath, and the local codes are often much more rigorous. So that gets people where you're able to have an influence upon your elected representatives. You know, it's funny, for most Americans, a member of Congress, a senator, for heaven's sakes, a president, is something that they have no contact with at all. I mean, it's a bunch of commercials that are broadcast at them, both by the candidate and by his opponents and by super PACs. You get down to the city council, and these are people that you played high school football with, or that you took to the prom, or that they're real people, they're accessible. You make your case to them, and we've been vastly more successful there.
That's really interesting. So do you envision that kind of movement could actually move up and create a national energy policy that can push some of these issues? Or do you think it's more of fixing one issue at a time and sort of seeing how that evolves?
I've been around long enough that I don't even guess about that sort of thing anymore. Any given issue in American politics will be trumped for some period of time by a hugely emotional thing that comes down the pike that nobody really expected, and suddenly it's just dominating the airwaves, and 6 months later people will have completely forgotten about it. But if it happens during an election, you see a complete turnover. Energy has seldom been one of those issues. It arguably was a little bit after the first Arab oil embargo. Subsequent things, very few people have been elected in the eyes of their constituents because of their positions on any energy issue. Sometimes their positions on energy issues have given them extraordinarily large campaign contributions that have contributed to their elections, but it's not part of what the public has been caring about. And I think that, in complete guesswork, but I'm guessing that we will never get something that is a national policy that I would be strongly personally enthusiastic about until we force this issue into a level of public consciousness where people really care about climate change, really care about having a degree of national self-sufficiency and national security, care about spending their money at home instead of shipping it off to the Middle East, and care in a voting issue as they do with abortion or gun control or some of these deeply emotional things. On the environmental issues and the safe, secure, renewable energy issues, we enjoy enormously widespread public support. It's just that it hasn't been a voting issue. It's sort of what politicians call a Mississippi issue. It's one of them that are a mile wide and a foot deep. We got to keep the mile wide and increase the depth.
Do you see part of the... I think that we have a lot of support from the consumer as the consumer recognizes the need to cut our energy use, and I think the consumer recognizes that they can save money by either working with their utility to figure out ways to cut their energy use and implementing, new lighting technologies. But is there sort of a disconnect in that it's slightly unrealistic? So, because the consumer's not like you say, there needs to be some event where the consumer really recognizes the situation that we're in. And so then when you get past the, okay, yes, I want to do it, then it's the logistics of getting that done and getting the appropriate financing. And so it seems that we're at a transition point of creating regulations that will support that and creating the mechanisms that will support that, but we're not quite there. So how do you envision that going forward?
I'm guessing that is something that will begin at the local level with various innovative programs. And we've had a bunch of innovations that have taken off, some of which have been stymied by federal housing regulators and been stymied by other folks, but really innovative things that have come out of local communities. And I suspect that they will grow, they will multiply, and the hugely successful ones will eventually become hopefully national in scope. With regard to the question about investments by utilities in increased efficiency, the difficulty for utilities right now is that when they make an investment in somebody else's building to increase, or they pay somebody else to make an investment in their building to increase its efficiency, they don't know how long it's going to last. Most of these things require maintenance. They require good operations. Once you've got your money, the building owner has no particular need to do that again. Usually they tend to lease out the buildings and the tenants pay the utility bills, so the building owner doesn't even see that direct feedback. Meanwhile, the utility, in order to give it that money, which it doesn't know how long the change is going to last, will highly discount the future savings in it, so they don't give you very much money. They give you enough to go and cherry pick and maybe get 15% savings. And they'd have to get the money from their other ratepayers because this is energy that they're now not selling, and so the other ratepayers are paying the price that they're giving to the building owner. Now, there are various ways that you could cut right through all of that, and this may be too complex to get through, but I'll do a 1-minute version of it. We now can meter savings in a building. So you go to a building and you find out what its energy bills have been for the last 5 years. You know all of the schematics of how it was built and what kinds of equipment are inside it. You can normalize for degree days. You can factor into what is effectively a smart computerized piece of software that functions as a meter, such things as tenant occupancy and the kind of business it is. And then you can tell, when you make an investment in efficiency, how much is actually being saved. So if you've got that, then the utility, knowing what that savings is, can enter into a long-term purchase agreement with somebody to go in and make those investments. And then every year, as long as the real savings takes place, you pay them. If there are no real savings, you don't pay them. The third party, knowing that he's got a guaranteed string of income for the next 20 years if he does it right, can go to a bank and get financing at very low cost for that, just as you'd be financing, say, a wind project. And it's much the same sort of thing. You're selling negawatts that are metered instead of kilowatts that are metered. Meanwhile, the utility sells both the kilowatts and the negawatts to the building owner. So for the first 20 years, the building owner doesn't save any money, but he hasn't invested any money either. And he gets a lease payment, just like the farmer who's leasing out his land for the wind farm developer. The person who invested in the efficiency gives some of the payments that he gets from the utility as a leasing fee for the equipment being in the person's building. What the building owner does have is something that's guaranteed that for the next 20 years, although he's not saving any money, his power bills won't be going up. He's got it metered in. Because he's buying that saved energy, the other ratepayers aren't disadvantaged by this person saving energy. And so the utility wins because it has to invest in less new generating equipment. The other ratepayers win because their energy bills will be lower because there were no new generating facilities. The independent third-party financier gets a 20-year contract, access to very cheap money. Building owner wins because he hadn't had to lay out anything. He gets 20 years of secure bills and lease payments. And after that, he gets all of this investment for free, and his building is worth that much more money. I mean, it's win, 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 win right now. What you need is somebody that will first adopt it. And we're working on Seattle to be an early adopter now. And this is one approach. There will be other people doing other things in other cities. One of them will be, I believe, spectacularly successful, and when that happens, we'll have a revolution.
That's amazing. And so I was, Dr. Robine from the Undersecretary of Department of Defense testified last week in Congress about a new metering program for the federal facilities, and that there have never been these meters, so they can't measure the energy. And so that's also a great stride, kind of in line with what you're saying, is that it really opens the door to make some of these changes, and I think it's really exciting. It's exciting for our country.
You only change what you measure.
And right.
The concept that so many of our buildings, honest to goodness, have not been metered is mind-blowing in 2012.
Yes, it's crazy. Well, thank you for joining us today. We're here with Denis Hayes at the Global New Energy Summit in Colorado Springs. And to find more, go to the Bullitt Foundation and learn more about the amazing things that Denis Hayes is doing.